And welcome. Today is another episode of the Tuesday Pulse AI, and today I'm going to be talking about why AI pilots stalled. And as you probably realize, it's rarely the software. And so, for those who haven't been part of this, I'm Chuck Boyce. I'm with CB Creative, and I do this on a weekly basis. And so, today, again, why the AI pilot stalled. And with the subheading, it's rarely the software, it's always more of the business. So, picture this. 6 months ago, somebody on your team got really excited about a tool. They saw a great demo. It could have been you as the owner or a manager, and there was a kickoff call. The demo looked really good. The rollout plan was made. It looked fine. And then today, two people are still doing it the old way, just in case. And the subscription's being paid. Nobody brought it up in the last meeting because felt like they didn't really want to do something, and the pilot just kind of went away, although it's still being paid for. So just think about this in the back of your mind with you or any business that you've worked for. Can you think of a tool, whether it's AI or just an automation tool, that is sitting there half used in your business right now, that started out really good and it just kind of went there, but you forgot about the subscription and you're still paying for it, but nobody's really using it? And I'm sure that what I've seen, there's a lot of businesses who have these type of tools there that forget that they have the subscription and they keep on paying, but nobody's using it. So when the pilot stalls, it's normally technology that gets blamed, or it's someone gets a blame. The vendor oversold it. They said, it's easy, we're going to save time, we're going to save money, the typical hype. Or the team resisted the change. And that's one of the big things, is that old habits die hard, and AI still has an iffy reputation. It's still known to hallucinate, and people don't trust it. It's going to steal their job, that type of stuff. Or you just picked the wrong tool. It looked great, and it never worked in their environment. The demo was great, but it was never demoed with their data and their process. Or they just had bad integration. It didn't integrate with the tool that they thought it would. And you look, and given any use case, it's just none of them are the actual root cause. It's again, it goes down to the business not being really ready for the tool before they brought it in. And so, before I show you numbers, again, these, since I record, this is as of August 2026, and so the numbers can change. Verify before using them. So, NANDA, MIT did this study, the Networked AI Agent in Decentralized Architecture Initiative, and they did a project called the Gen AI Divide. This was back in late 2025, and they looked at 300 enterprises that did AI deployments. These are enterprises, not small businesses, but the number that gets quoted everywhere is 95% of these pilots showed no measurable financial return. That's not a small number, and this is what it actually looks like with 14 people or something with real dollars attached. And so here is a company that I dealt with. And so 14-person small specialty manufacturing, this is real business, and they decided that they wanted to automate their customer onboarding. The AI was going to answer post-sale questions and guide the customer through setup, cut down on 3 supports reps, give them more time to do other things, and they were expecting it to save time and money and eventually be able to hire more, build business without hiring more. And so they spent $18,000 on the pilot, and that's with the platform, the implementation, the integrations, and staff time. And so the tool itself wasn't $18,000, but when you add up all of the components, they invested $18,000 into this pilot. So then it stalled, didn't launch, never made it to production, and it wasn't the AI. The problem was that AI had been given bad information to learn from. And so remember, LLMs are only as good as the information that you give them, the instruction set, the data that provide them, because they're only looking at their information and predictively coming up with what should come next. And so, again, the technology is rarely the problem. it's the business behind it. So they had 3 support reps, and they did things completely differently and completely unwritten. It was inconsistent. One person replied on email responses. She had templates that she saved over the years and consistently reused the same templates. And another one just gave short answers because they were wanting to get on to the next thing, and so they were very terse and curt and just gave an immediate answer. And then the third one had really detailed notes and a lot of experience and used a lot of things that were in their mind that they've done for years. And so no one ever had a consistent approved onboarding process. And so again, a business problem. When the team fed examples into the AI to start training it, the AI had 3 different versions to go from for the right answer. And so it had to interpret which was the right one, and normally it was the first one that came up. And so there were some steps that were missing completely because reps gave inconsistent information for the AI to be trained on. And so the AI did exactly what it was trained with, using the information that it was trained with. So the pilot never made it into production, and nobody could ever really say whether that $18,000 failed financially because it was just an expensive experiment based on perceptions. They spent it on the new tool and the processes and the integration, and that is their known cost. The original idea was that they wanted to save time, but they never measured how many onboarding calls came in and how much time each rep actually took on it. They didn't realize the support labor, how much interaction there was, what it was the cost of that individual and the time it took. And so what mistakes were made, what had to be reworked, what was rolled back, how did they vary their things. There's a lot of edge cases that a demo would never understand, and there was probably missorted data that it never had to deal with. And so again, they never had a baseline of what the existing process actually costed. And so they never knew, was $18,000 just an expensive experiment? So what actually fixed it, it turned out, was just more than a bad pilot. Before they could automate anything, they first had to agree, what does good onboarding look like? The first wasn't an AI assistant. It was a documented process. They had to understand what the actual steps were and make sure that people could do that consistently. They needed an approved knowledge base of what data was actually being trained with. They needed to define the exceptions in their edge cases, and they needed a real baseline to understand, are they going to save money? Are they going to save time? And only after that did they start implementing the AI, because you can always consider AI to be an intern. An intern, if you hire somebody brand new, if they can't give them a documented process that they need to follow and expect them to do it without human interaction, that's what AI is expected to do. And so you have to give AI explicit instructions with clean data, and that's when it starts to become successful. So this was just one story. It doesn't matter if it's 14 people or if it's an enterprise 400 or more. Doesn't matter what the tool is, but the process is a pattern that repeats itself. You cannot automate a process that changes depending on who's doing it. You can't measure a fixed cost for what you never counted. And so again, this is a business problem that's being addressed with technology. And it doesn't matter what the AI model is or if it's an automation tool. If your business isn't done in a consistent manner, in a consistent form by the same people, AI is not going to fix this. So here's what actually goes on. The task gets done every time. Feels like there's a process, but there isn't, because it's a person. And again, it's that person's interpretation. In the manufacturing case, it was 3 people. They each had an alternative solution, and the job got done, and the clients were normally happy, but it was in a consistent manner. 3 different people, 3 different ways of doing, ending up with the same result. AI cannot do that. So that's what I refer to as the process illusion, the gap between this task gets done and this task is actually documented. There's 3 reps, 3 good answers, 0 shared results, 0 shared process. There was stuff that people missed. So documenting means 2 things. The steps are written down and you know what the process costs to run today. And so that is looking at the people who are doing it, what their base labor costs are, the time taken, added that to the subscription cost, add that to the data storage cost, and that is these things that you have to understand what you're trying to replace with the AI. What steps are taken, how much it costs to do it today. So again, going back to that, think of AI as your new intern. Could a new hire come in today with no verbal explanation and say, do this and get it done right? That is what you're expecting the AI to do. You can't expect hours of explanation or hands-on training. You have to be able to give it a documented, complete process that is consistent. So, steps tell you what to do and cost tells you what to measure against. And so it doesn't tell you what it costs. If you know the steps, you have to really come up with a number. You have to set that baseline. You can't measure a return on investment against numbers that you've never written down. And so $18,000 in that example was finding out the hard way. They really didn't know if that $18,000 was value taken or an expensive experiment. So they never had it written down, and that's what you need to establish before you bring in a automation tool, whether it's AI or any integration. Have to set a baseline if you want to measure your return on investment. And the costing is the hidden price tag, which is another area that I'm not really going to touch heavily on today. So, baseline component number 1, you have to understand the hours per week and tracked. And so one big issue is human nature. If you ask somebody how long it takes to do a certain process, they're going to guesstimate trying to save their job. Yes, this takes me 5 minutes to do, thinking that they're being efficient, and it really takes them 15 minutes. Or they may say, this takes me 30 minutes to justify their rate. And so humans guessing isn't always truth, because it's human nature. They're protecting their job, they're protecting their work. So without tracking, you really have to measure it, monitor it, use some tools to maybe track their keyboard or something, but you do have to try to get a more complete baseline of the actual amount of time that it takes to do a task. That way you know what your employee is being paid, so you have a cost that you can associate with the time component, and you know that this process takes 4 hours at $25 an hour, and so it's going to be costing me X amount of dollars to do this. And so again, something you should observe over a period of time and not just ask somebody to guesstimate what it's going to take. Take a week, use some tools, monitor, and try to get a more accurate number of what your labor is involved. And the second is the subscriptions. And so here's where a lot of people think subscriptions are just that one cost. Every tool is more than one. You may have spreadsheets, a form tool, a CRM. There's other integration points. So you have multiple tools. It's not just this one AI app subscription that you're suddenly adding on. There are additional tools that are also being used that you have to consider. Okay, so I have Workplace and I'm using Google Sheets and Word, and I can break that down into, okay, that's costing me $3 a day or something like that. At least you have a better idea of your overall, all the tools that are being used within this process, and that is an additional cost of that process. And it's normally more than one. And so if you can name 1 or 2 off the top of your head, that's great, but there's probably another one that you're forgetting. So then there's the integration and data. So Then you have your integration tools. You have Zapier or Make or some other tool that ties all the data together. So that is an additional subscription. So you have to think of, when you're doing it manually, how many times does the data get copied, retyped, double checked, even before it's done? And so, is there a single trusted source of your data? Then is your data, has it been consistently entered? If two people are entering, say you have a sales rep that enters in, use my name as an example. Somebody knows me as Chuck Boyce and someone knows me as Charles Boyce. And so they entered in as different. Does the CRM know the distinction between those two, that it's the same person? Is your data being entered consistently? And are they entering the same fields all the time? Or is there missing data? So when you do an integration, you have to consider the trusted source of your data and what data is being moved to another system, and then you have to test that. And so if the manual process has a cost of how long it takes to take this data, enter it in, copy it over to another system, that again is some labor costs that a lot of people don't take into consideration. And again, the tools that may be used, you have those subscription data. And so again, something that, to get a true return on investment, it's something that you should be aware of. And you're thinking, oh, here's another project. I'm already dealing with strategy and operations and human resources and financing and sales and marketing. I don't have time to document everything that's doing there. And so you don't have to really take a lot of time. Take 15 minutes in a day for a week and set a baseline. You don't have to be super, super detailed down to the minute, but anything documented, even as a general way, is going to be better than guessing. And so get something down, start basic. The more grained you can get, more granular you can get, better it is. But again, just get a start. Have a baseline that you can start to measure against. And so here's what numbers may actually look like. Say that it takes 12 hours for a $38 an hour person. That's $1,560 a month in labor. And then you have 3 subscriptions at $50 a piece, so there's another $150. And then you figure out with double entry, double checking, somebody's counting, you take another 2 to 3 hours a week. And so before AI or automation even enters the room, your manual processes are costing $1,800 to $2,000 a month to run. And so then you have something to compare against. So now you realize, yes, $2,000 a month to run this process. There's your baseline. Again, most businesses never document that. Nobody writes this down. So when they expect a return on investment, the owner, the manager, the CEO comes in and says, did we save money? Did we save time? And they say, yeah, we did, but is there a number that you can actually prove the return on investment? And that's where some pilots fail, because there isn't a return on investment. It's more expensive to do it with automation. Or they could say, yes, this is a real good value. We need to go into production with this. Something to measure against. So about 10 hours a week, that's a guess. That's not a baseline. You have to make the process feel documented. It's familiar to you. If you're thinking about cutting headcount, or not even cutting headcount, improving, increasing volume, thinking that the AI is going to do, again, you need to have a baseline to understand where these savings are going to come from. So here's where you need your self-check. Do you want to do this? So number one, is it written down step by step? What are the actual steps to the process that is being considered for automation or for AI running it? 2, does it have a named owner? Because without a named owner, there's no one to blame. Not blame, but say something goes wrong. AI gets the wrong information and the wrong customer name goes through, or an old price or an old process, an old name gets referenced, because you need to have a named owner. If something causes a problem that becomes a liability factor, a legal case or something in a regulated environment, you can't blame AI in the courts. The courts will not accept technology as the blame. An owner has to be associated with that. And so you have to have a named owner of the process that can be responsible for double checking, the human in the loop. That named owner can't be, yeah, accounting does it or human resources does it. It is Sally in accounting or Frank in human resources. They're the named owner of this process. And then you have to look at the consistency. Would two people produce the exact same output? Would three people? If you can't do that, you can't bring in your intern or you can't bring in the AI to do this. You have to have it consistently enough that it can follow those. And then, do you know what your baseline is? How long is it taking now? And what is your current cost? So, AI doesn't pick the better answer. It only works with what it's given. So again, if two people start entering information into the knowledge base that AI is feeding upon, AI is going to pick the first one that it thinks about. It's going to predict which is the best answer. It's not going to be a consistent answer. If there's two options, it depends on where in the training loop and the processing of the AI is doing that which answer it's going to give. And so with contradicting answers or missing steps, that's what AI is going to work with. And so good faith and inconsistent versions, that doesn't work. Nothing consistent in AI, generative AI, that's just the way it works. It randomly and confidently selects the next best answer based on what it's been trained. And so it's a predictive tool that just guesses very confidently. That's the hallucinations. It may not be right, but depending on what it's been trained on. And so if somebody wrote it down the old way and AI has that, AI didn't break. It was only doing what it was told to do. So here's what you should reframe. A stalled pilot is not proof that the technology doesn't work for your business. It's a diagnostic result, and oftentimes it's delivered the hard way, that the pilot's a failure. And again, you can't say that it was the AI. It was the information that the AI was given that didn't produce the results that you wanted to produce. And so that's your diagnostic. And sometimes for that manufacturing, it's an $18,000 diagnostic that they realize that their business was at fault and not their technology. So here's what you want to do. You want to write the process down step by step, not just say that customer calls, somebody responds, and they get an answer. There's more steps than that. And so number two, have the owner, name the owner of the process. Doesn't have to be the owner of the department, but somebody owns the process. They're the name that's associated with anything that could go wrong. They're the ones who double checks it to make sure that the output is right before it gets put into the public. And then you have to define your triggers. How do you know when something doesn't work? What is going to be the trigger of the edge cases? Is there a stop point that you can say that AI made a mistake, we're stopping, we're not going, we have to fix the training of the AI before we can go further? That's what the pilots are for. And then, again, setting your baseline, knowing what it costs today so you have something to measure return on your investment. So, 1 week tracking exercise will give you better results than you currently have. It's better than almost anybody walking in with a vendor call. So if you have this information ahead of time, you can do this self-assessment by the person who does it the most, get it down. So when you're talking to a vendor, you can actually give them what your real case is and not the demo that they've developed in their labs over months of times and fine-tuned it so it always works and they have clean data. You have to understand your way of doing it, have them try to replicate your process and give them examples of your data. Most businesses do not have clean data. It's going to be inconsistent. There's going to be duplicates. There's going to be missing fields. There's going to be wrong information. It's not accurate. It's not consistent. Clean the data before you do this. Have the vendor use your data dirty the way it is right now, because eventually you're going to have to clean it up, and they have to understand, you have to understand where it's going to possibly fail and what to look for. So again, do some homework ahead of time before the vendor comes in and you're sold on the shiny demo. Use your processes, use your data if possible. Clean it up, anonymize it, don't give them the specifics, but use as much as they need to show that their product will work in your environment. And here's where the baseline actually adds up. If you have a structured process map with a cost baseline mapped instead of self-tracked, you know what it's going to cost. You can get a readiness score to show that here's what it currently takes. You now know where your edge cases are. You can get risk identification. You can understand what to look for and where it may fail. And then you can have a written implementation brief. And so, again, when I do this, this is the type of things that I help the businesses work with. Help them structure your process, find out what it's costing, give them a score, find out where potential risk is going to be, and then give them a roadmap going forward as to where the best opportunities are going to be. I don't recommend tools. I don't sell the tools. I don't recommend a vendor. I can give them who I've worked with that I trust. But again, you have a baseline, a roadmap, not a product. And so one more thing, a stalled pilot, again, means that the team quietly goes back to work using unapproved tools, and they bring things in. And this is another thing that is becoming more and more of a problem. It's called shadow AI. It's the people who start using these AI tools that weren't authorized. They are entering proprietary information, customer information. They don't understand that these tools are being trained. They don't understand the configuration of how to not use training materials. And so client data, proprietary customer information, proprietary business information may be sent up to OpenAI or Anthropic or Google, and their AI is being trained on it. And so your client suddenly sees their name in a response that AI gave them, and they're saying, wow, where did that come from? And they can trace it back to you. That's a liability. You have to understand your employees, if they're not told that we need to understand what tools, we're not going to say don't use it, but you have to understand what can be configured to use this. Give them the opportunity to explain how it's making their job better and understand the risks of using the tool with data. Let them know that they can use it, but you can't enter this data in it. Give them guidelines, give them guardrails, talk to them. Communications, don't just say you can't use OpenAI or you can't use Claude, because they'll use it. And so it's human nature again. Work with them, understand what they're doing, give them guidelines to make it safer. So what to do this week if you're thinking of bringing AI into the process is to document the process first. How many hours, what apps, what subscriptions are touching it? Is your data clean? Here's your first baseline. Take 15 minutes a day over a week. Just understand, start with the simplest process first. Understand what that process is, document that first, take your low-hanging fruit, see where it touches, set your baseline, bring in AI or an automation tool, and then see what the difference is. You have a baseline, you can measure ROI. And so if you want to do this yourself, I have a 15-minute tool called assessment at cbcreative.com, and ask you about your process, and then it goes through 25 questions, and it will give you a score of how ready your business actually is to automate that process. Again, I don't say that, oh, because of this, you should use product X or product Y or use this vendor. It's just, are you ready for it? Here's your initial assessment. 15 minutes, easy to do. And if you if you want to use me, you can call me, but 15-minute call, cbcreative.com/contact, and I'll work with you, give you something that you can start with, see if it's worth for you to pursue. Oftentimes it is, but the business has to be ready for the automation and the tool before you bring in the tool. Stop the shiny toy. It looks beautiful, the demos are great, but is your business ready for it? Understand what you need to do to prepare your business before you bring in the tool. And with that, that's all I have to cover today. I'm going